Hello, in this lesson we will talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. So this objective is to understand parallel and perpendicular lines. So let's talk about parallel lines first. Some things about parallel lines are, well, one, they never intersect. Intersect means they never touch. Okay, so they will go on in the same direction forever and ever. Right, these are the more practical things about parallel lines. However, when we talk about slope, we could say that parallel lines are going to have the same slope. Okay. Now transitioning over to perpendicular lines. These lines are going to intersect. However, they intersect at right angles. And something about their slope is their slopes are going to be opposite reciprocal slopes. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Okay, next, the symbol for parallel lines are going to be these two railroad tracks. These two this symbol just means railroad tracks, this symbol represents parallel lines, which kind of look like railroad tracks because all railroad tracks are parallel. This symbol right here means perpendicular. Why? Because it looks like this is an intersection and they cross at a right angle. So here's what parallel lines look like. Well, let's say you have a coordinate plane like this, right? You have one line that goes up here, one line that goes up here, like this. Notice how they will never ever touch and they are both parallel. Sometimes you'll see those symbols right there to indicate that those are also parallel. On the contrary, let's talk about what perpendicular lines look like. Let's say you have a line right here, and let's say your other line is going to be right here. Notice how these lines are going to intersect at perfect right angles. This is how you know these are going to be perpendicular. So now let's talk about how to find them from if you're given a slope. Okay. So for this one right here, I don't know why it's shifted off a little bit, but we'll manage. Find the slope of both parallel and perpendicular to the given slope. So parallel lines have the same exact slope. So if one line has a slope of 1/2, the parallel line, remember this is the symbol for parallel line, will also have the same exact slope of 1/2. So that's super easy. Okay, perpendicular lines are going to be different. Perpendicular lines are going to be opposite reciprocal. So that means if one is positive, the perpendicular line is going to be negative, right? That's the opposite portion. And now the reciprocal portion, right? If you have a reciprocal portion, right, the reciprocal of this is you have to flip the numerator and denominator. So it's then going to be what? 2/1. However, because my first line was positive, this line is going to be negative. So I could write this as just -2. So the perpendicular line is going to be -2. Okay, now let's do another one. Let's do this page and so that we get accustomed to it. So if a line has a slope of -3, let's do the parallel line first. Parallel line is also going to have a slope of -3. It's the same slope for parallel lines. Now let's do opposite reciprocal of this, find the perpendicular line. What is -3 as a fraction? -3 as a fraction is the same thing as -3/1. I'm finding the opposite reciprocal of -3/1. That means you flip it 1/3, and it actually becomes positive because my original line was negative. So this slope, perpendicular slope, is going to be 1/3. Okay. Now let's do the next one. Parallel lines are super easy. It is exactly the same slope. Perpendicular lines, remember you're going to find the opposite reciprocal. So the reciprocal of this is going to be positive 5/4. And then throwing the opposite symbol too, so it's going to be positive 5/4. All right, next, 1. Okay, 1 is 1 over 1 as a fraction, right? So that's the original slope, so that means my parallel slope is also going to have a slope of 1. Now let's find the opposite reciprocal. So if it's a positive 1, it's going to be a negative 1, and you have to flip this fraction, then it is still going to be a 1 over 1, but a negative 1 over 1. Right? So that means my perpendicular line is going to have a slope of negative 1. Okay. This is where it's going to be a little bit different. If you have a slope of 0, right? Slope of 0, the parallel line is also going to have a slope of 0. Right? Because it's the same slope. However, remember how we talked about no and okay? These are also going to be perpendicular to each other. So if you have a slope of 0, that's okay, right? So a line perpendicular to that is going to be no, which means this has the slope of undefined. So this slope is going to be undefined. And we talked about the other day, right? If you ever have a slope of like y equals a number, that is going to be what kind of line? That is a horizontal line. However, if you have an x equals a number, that is going to be a vertical line. Horizontal lines have a slope of 0 slope, because remember, hoi. Vertical lines have a slope of undefined slope. And one way to remember that is vux, right? So that's how you also can tell that hoi and vux are going to be opposite reciprocals of each other. Okay, moving on to the next page. All right, we'll do the first 3, and then I'm going to have you guys do the next 3 on your own. Sorry, this is all going back and forth. Find the slope of the line both parallel and perpendicular to the given slope. Hint, you may have to simplify and solve for y first. Okay, well, what is the slope of this line? Remember, the slope of this line is always going to be the number in front of your variable, right? So the parallel line is super easy. The parallel line is going to be exactly the same. Now let's find a perpendicular line. Well, if it's 1/2, opposite reciprocal is going to be what? Negative 2 over 1, which is the same thing as negative 2. All right. I have negative 7. Parallel line is also going to be negative 7. Perpendicular, remember, negative 7 is the same thing as negative 7 over 1. Find the reciprocal of it, change it from negative to positive. Perpendicular is going to have a 1 over 7. Last one before I let you work a little bit on your own. So if you have an equation that looks like this, you have to solve for y first, right? Because you have to make it into y equals mx plus b. So you want y by itself, so let me add 3 to both sides first. So I have 3x plus 3 equals 10y. I'm going to divide each number by 10. So I have 3 over 10, x plus 3 over 10 is equal to y. For those who want it in terms of like y equals mx plus b, you could just flip it. So you have y equals 3 over 10x plus 3 over 10. What is the slope of this line? The slope of this line is going to be 3 over 10. So also the parallel line would also have a slope of 3 over 10. Now let's find the opposite reciprocal of 3 over 10, right? This is going to be negative 10 over 3. You flip it and make it negative. Good. So just remember, anytime you have to find the slope when you're working on these 3, always solve for y first. Be careful when you're dealing with negatives here. For number 9 and number 11. I'll post the answers on the Edpuzzle as well, so that you can kind of check your work as you're going. And you can, after you finish this Edpuzzle, circle your level of understanding, and you may begin on your CYU for tonight. Bye, everyone.